The sky was burning red with fire. Explosions shook the ground. Smoke rose high like black mountains. The battlefield was full of broken machines, fallen soldiers, and the sound of war. In the middle of this chaos stood Kale, an alien warrior. His armor was dark silver, scratched by countless fights. His eyes glowed like cold stars, and his sharp weapon hummed with deadly energy. Many humans feared his name. To them, he was a monster, a bringer of death. Kale moved like a storm across the battlefield. Every step shook the ground. Every strike of his blade cut through steel. Human soldiers tried to stop him, but none could stand against his strength. He was trained since childhood to fight, to conquer, to destroy. For Kale, battle was not just survival, it was his purpose. Yet deep inside, something felt empty. Each time he struck down an enemy, each time he heard the screams, the emptiness grew. He had fought in many wars, but he had never asked why. His people called humans weak, fragile, unworthy of life. But Kale had seen them fight with courage, had seen them protect each other. That image never left his mind. Tonight's battle was worse than any before. The human base was almost destroyed. Fires lit the night sky like dying stars. Soldiers were retreating, dragging their wounded comrades. But Kale and his army pushed forward. Victory was near. As Kale moved through the smoke, he saw something unusual. A figure, small and fragile, running across the ruins. It was not a soldier with a gun. It was a human medic carrying a heavy bag. She knelt beside a fallen soldier, trying to save him even while bombs fell around her. Kyle stopped. His weapon was raised, ready to strike. His orders were clear. Kill all humans. Yet his hand froze. Why? The medic's hands shook as she worked, her face pale with fear, but her eyes were strong. She pressed her hands on the wound of the soldier, whispering words Kale could not understand. She did not run. She did not fight. She tried to save a life even when her own life was in danger. For the first time, Kale felt something strange inside his chest. Not anger, not pride, something else. A shadow moved behind her. Another alien soldier raised his gun. In 1 second, the medic would die. Without thinking, Kyle moved. His blade cut through the air, blocking the shot. The alien soldier turned in shock. "Kyle, what are you doing?" the soldier shouted. But Kale did not answer. He struck down his own comrade in silence. The medic looked up, eyes wide with fear. She expected death, but instead, she saw her enemy standing over her like a shield. Kyle's glowing eyes met hers. She trembled, but she did not run. The fallen soldier she tried to save was already gone. Tears touched her face, but she kept her body still, watching the alien warrior. Kale lowered his weapon. He did not know why. He only knew he could not kill her. More alien troops approached. Their voices shouted through the smoke. Kyle knew they had seen him protect the human. He knew what it meant: betrayal, punishment, maybe death. Still, he spoke the only words his voice could form in her language. His voice was deep, broken, but clear. "Run, now." The medic froze, confused, but Kale's eyes told her he was serious. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she picked up her bag and slowly moved back. But fate had other plans. A blast shook the ground, throwing both Kale and the medic to the floor. Dust filled the air. She coughed, trying to stand, but her leg was bleeding. She could not run anymore. Kale turned, watching her struggle. His orders, his loyalty, his entire life screamed at him to leave her. She was human. She was the enemy. Yet his heart beat fast, louder than the battle around him. For the first time in his life, Kale made a choice not for his people, not for war, but for himself. He lifted the medic into his arms, ignoring her weak protests. His armor was heavy, but his strength carried her with ease. Around them, the battle raged on. Alien voices shouted his name. Human soldiers fired in panic. But Kale walked forward, carrying the one life he could not destroy. The medic looked up at him, eyes full of fear and questions. She whispered something in her language, a single word. He did not understand it, but he felt its meaning. The battlefield was no longer just about victory or defeat. It was about a choice that could change everything. And in that moment, the great alien warrior Kale became more than a soldier. He became something new, something dangerous, something human. The night was heavy with smoke. Fires burned across the ruined battlefield, and the air carried the sharp smell of ash and blood. Kale moved quickly, carrying the human medic in his arms. She was light compared to the heavy weapons he had lifted in war, but every step he took felt heavier than the last. The woman's face was pale, her eyes filled with pain. A piece of metal had cut her leg, and blood stained her clothes. Her breaths came short and fast. Even in her weakness, she stared at him with defiance. She was afraid, yes, but she was not broken. Kale stopped behind the ruins of a collapsed wall. Alien soldiers were searching the area, their voices echoing through the smoke. He laid the human down gently on the ground. She winced, biting her lip to hide the pain. For a moment, Kale studied her. She was fragile, soft-skinned, nothing like the strong bodies of his kind. Her eyes, however, were bright and sharp. She looked at him not like a savior, not like a monster. She looked at him as if trying to read his soul. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was weak, but the question struck harder than any blade. "Why? Save me?" Kyle did not answer at once. His language was heavy, and human words felt broken on his tongue. Finally he spoke. "No death. For you." The medic frowned. She wanted more, but it was all he could give. He did not even understand his own reason. All he knew was that killing her felt impossible. She tried to move, but pain shot through her leg. Kale's eyes narrowed. If she stayed here, she would bleed to death. If his soldiers found her, they would execute her without hesitation. Slowly, Kale reached into her bag and pulled out strange tools, bandages, small bottles, and sharp instruments he did not know. The medic pushed his hand away. "No, I do it." Her voice was firm. Kyle watched in silence as she pressed cloth against her wound, her hands trembling but determined. Every motion showed her courage. She was human, weak by his people's measure, yet her spirit was stronger than many warriors he had fought beside. Above them, a shadow moved. Kale's instincts flared. He grabbed his weapon and pulled her close, shielding her body with his own. A beam of red light shot down, striking the ground near them. Another alien soldier had found their trail. "Kyle!" the soldier roared. "Report, why are you hiding? What is that human?" Kale's grip on his weapon tightened. If he answered, he would betray her. If he fought, he would betray his people. The medic's eyes locked onto his. She understood the danger. She whispered something he could not understand, but her tone was clear. It was a plea, maybe for him to let her go, maybe for him to choose life. Kyle rose to his full height, towering over the rubble. The other soldier saw the human behind him and raised his weapon. Kyle moved first. With one strike, his blade cut the weapon in two. The soldier stumbled back in shock. "You dare betray us?" the soldier growled. Kale's voice was deep and cold. "Leave!" The soldier's eyes burned with anger, but he also feared Kale's strength. With a hiss of rage, he retreated into the smoke. Kale knew this would not last. Soon, others would. Come. The word traitor would follow him wherever he went. He turned back to the medic. She was staring at him with wide eyes, her breathing fast. She had just seen him kill his own comrade for her. Fear mixed with something else in her gaze. Confusion, wonder, perhaps even trust. Kale bent down and lifted her again. "Safe," he said, though the word felt strange. The medic shook her head weakly. "There is no safe. Not here." Still, Kyle walked. He carried her away from the battlefield, into the ruins where no soldier cared to look. Each step carried him farther from his people, farther from the life he had always known. The night grew quieter as they entered the abandoned streets of a shattered city. Broken lights flickered, walls cracked, and silence covered the ruins. Kale set her down inside the remains of an old shelter. The medic leaned against the wall, exhausted. Her voice was soft. My name, Ilara. Kyle blinked. Names were sacred to his kind. Sharing one was a sign of trust. After a pause, he spoke. Kyle. For the first time, the tension eased. Two enemies, both alone, both wounded in their own ways, now shared something small but powerful. A name. Ilara looked at him with tired eyes. You should leave me. If they find you with me, you will die. Kyle shook his head. His voice was low, certain. I stay. In her weakness, Ilara almost smiled. She did not know why this alien chose her, why he risked everything. But in that broken city, surrounded by death, something began to grow, something more dangerous than war. It was the first spark of a bond that neither side could understand. The ruins were silent, but Kale's ears never rested. Every sound, every falling stone, every whisper of wind felt like a threat. He stood near the broken doorway of the shelter, his tall frame casting a shadow in the pale moonlight. His weapon hummed softly, ready for battle. Inside the cracked walls, Ilara sat with her back against the stone, her wounded leg stretched before her. She had bandaged it, but the pain was still sharp. Her eyes never left Kale. He was her enemy. He was the reason cities burned, the reason soldiers fell. And yet, he had saved her. He had carried her away from death. He had stood against his own kind to protect her. For Ilara, nothing made sense anymore. Finally, she broke the silence. Why do you stay? Your people will hunt you. My people will shoot you. You are caught between us. Kyle turned slowly, his glowing eyes meeting hers. His words were few, heavy. I choose. Choose what? She asked, her voice sharp. To play hero? To pretend you care about humans? Kale tilted his head. He could not explain the storm inside him. His people had taught him humans were weak, selfish, unworthy. But Ilara was not weak. Even bleeding and exhausted, she fought for life. Even surrounded by war, she still tried to save others. That spirit pulled at something deep inside Kale, something he had never felt before. You fight, but not for war, Kale said, his voice low. You save. Ilara's chest tightened. Those words, spoken in broken human speech, cut through her anger. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had treated countless wounds, the same hands now trembling because of this alien. I'm a medic, she said softly. I heal. That's my duty. Kyle stared at her hands, then at her face. He gave a slow nod. Duty, but also heart. Ilara froze. Did this alien really understand her? Before she could answer, a distant noise echoed through the streets. Heavy steps. Alien voices. They were searching again. Kyle raised his weapon, standing in front of her like a wall of steel. Ilara grabbed his arm suddenly. No, wait. If they find us, you'll be forced to kill more of your kind. And if you do, there's no going back for you. Kale looked down at her hand on his armor. It was small, warm, human. Something inside him softened, but the danger was real. He gently moved her hand away. Survive first, think later. They hid in silence as soldiers passed nearby. Their voices were harsh, their weapons ready. Ilara pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from breathing too loud. Kale did not move, his body still as stone, but his eyes glowed in the darkness, watching every shadow. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the patrol moved on. Ilara let out a shaky breath. You saved me again. But why? Kale lowered his weapon. Not why. Must. Ilara frowned. You must? Why must you? I'm just one human. I'm no one important. Why risk everything? Kyle hesitated. His people would call him weak. His commanders would call him a traitor. But for the first time in his life, he didn't care about their voices, only his own. "You are different," he said simply. The words made Alara's heart pound. She wanted to argue, to remind him of the destruction his kind had caused. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no cruelty, no thirst for war. She saw conflict, she saw loneliness, she saw a warrior who had finally begun to feel. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with questions neither could ask. Then Alara whispered, almost to herself, Maybe you're different too." Kale did not answer, but for the first time, he felt as if those words were true. Suddenly, a sound broke the moment. A human drone flew overhead, its light scanning the ruins. Alara's eyes widened. "My people. If they see you, they'll shoot first." Kale stepped back into the shadows, but the drone paused, its light sweeping dangerously close. Alara's mind raced. If her people caught them together, Kale would be killed on sight. Without thinking, she grabbed Kale's arm and pulled him, down beside her. They crouched low in the dark corner, pressed close together. The drone's light passed by slowly, then faded into the night. They stayed still for a long moment. Alara's heart raced. Kyle's presence was overwhelming, his body massive, his breath deep and steady. She realized then, she was no longer afraid of him. When the danger passed, Kyle rose again, but his eyes lingered on her. Something unspoken passed between them. A fragile thread had formed, a thread that tied two enemies together, not with chains of war, but with something far more dangerous. Trust. Alara leaned back against the wall, her voice quiet. "So, what now? Am I your prisoner? Or are we allies?" Kale's eyes glowed in the shadows. His answer was slow, certain. "Not prisoner, not enemy. You live. I protect." Her heart tightened again. For the first time since the war began, Alara felt something impossible, hope. The night did not rest. The ruined city lay in silence, but danger breathed in every corner. Kale's sharp ears caught the sound of distant engines, the metallic clank of armored boots. His people were hunting. Inside the broken shelter, Alara shifted painfully. Her leg throbbed, though the bleeding had slowed. She watched Kale as he stood at the doorway, tall and unyielding like a dark statue. He did not speak, but his glowing eyes scanned every shadow. At last, Kyle turned. "We move." Alara frowned. "Move? I can't run. I'll slow you down." Kyle shook his head. "Stay, you die, with me. Maybe live." There was no choice. She nodded weakly. Kyle crouched and lifted her again, cradling her as if she weighed nothing. She gritted her teeth, hating her weakness, but deep inside she felt a strange safety in his arms. They slipped into the night. The city was a graveyard of shattered towers and burning wrecks. The streets were empty, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence of predators. Kale moved with the silent grace of a hunter, his senses sharp. Every flicker of light, every echo of metal he measured. Alara clung to his armor, trying not to think about how close her face was to his chest or how steady his heart sounded beneath layers of steel. Suddenly, a flash of red light tore across the street. A blast hit the ground nearby, shaking rubble into the air. Voices shouted in Kyle's language. Soldiers were close, too close. Kyle dashed into an alley, his heavy boots pounding quietly against the cracked stone. Alara held her breath as more beams of light cut through the night, scanning the ruins. "They're following us," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale's reply was calm, steady. "They follow me, not you." "What do you mean?" "They want, traitor." His jaw tightened. "They want me." The truth struck her like ice. He wasn't just saving her. He was running from his own people now. The alley twisted into darkness, but just as Kale turned a corner, another squad appeared. Red lights flared, weapons raised. "Kyle!" one soldier shouted. "Drop the human, come back and we forgive." Kyle stood tall, his glowing eyes burning. He spoke back in his language, harsh and sharp. Ilara didn't understand the words, but she felt the meaning. He was not going back. The soldiers opened fire. Kyle spun, shielding Ilara with his armored body as beams scorched the walls around them. With one arm he carried her, with the other he swung his blade, deflecting shots in a storm of sparks. The clash lit the alley like lightning. One soldier fell. Another screamed as Kale's weapon cut through metal. But there were too many. He couldn't fight while carrying her. Kale leapt upward, his powerful legs propelling them onto a half-collapsed balcony. The structure groaned, dust falling like rain, but it held. They ran across the broken edge, Kale moving with desperate speed. Behind them, soldiers shouted, climbing after. Ilara clutched tighter, her heart hammering. "You can't fight them all." Kale's voice rumbled like stone. "Not need. Only escape." They raced through crumbling hallways, through shattered glass and fallen beams. Every step was pursuit, every breath filled with fear. At last, Kale burst through a wall into the remains of an old transport tunnel. It was dark, damp, the air thick with dust, but it was cover. He set Ilara down gently against the wall, his chest heaving with silent breaths. Ilara's hands trembled as she touched his arm. "You're bleeding." Kale glanced down. A scorch mark burned across his side, smoke rising from the wound. He had taken a direct hit while shielding her. Ilara's throat tightened. Without thinking, she pulled supplies from her bag. "Stay still." Kyle frowned, but obeyed. His people did not trust humans, but something inside him kept him still as she pressed bandages against the wound. Her hands were gentle, careful, even though her own legs shook with pain. "Why?" Kale asked suddenly, his deep voice cutting through the silence. She looked up, confused. "Why what?" "Why save me? I am your enemy." Ilara froze. The answer seemed obvious, but when she looked at him, at his blood, his defiance, his strange loyalty to her, she realized it wasn't simple. "Because," she whispered, "I'm not like them. I don't take life. I try to save it, even if it's yours." Her words hung heavy in the darkness. For a long moment, Kyle stared at her. His glowing eyes softened, just slightly. Above them, the echo of boots returned. The soldiers had found the tunnel. Kyle rose quickly, ignoring the pain. He lifted Ilara again, but before moving, he said something he had never spoken before. Not in war, not in training. Together. We live, or we fall. Ilara felt a strange strength in those words. She nodded, her fear easing, replaced by something else. Trust. The chase was not over. The enemy was still close. But in that dark tunnel, one thing became clear. They were no longer just alien and human. They were two lives bound by survival, standing against the world, and the world would not let them go easily. The tunnel stretched on like a dark vein under the dead city. Broken lights flickered weakly, throwing shadows on the walls. Kale's heavy boots echoed as he carried Ilara deeper, away from the voices of pursuit. Every step was slower now. His wound burned, but he did not show weakness. At last, the tunnel opened into an abandoned chamber. Rusted machines lay silent, and the smell of damp metal filled the air. Here, there was no sound of soldiers. For a brief moment, they had peace. Kale set Ilara down gently against a wall. Her bandage was soaked again, her face pale with pain, but her eyes stayed sharp. She looked at him as he leaned against the wall across from her, blood dripping slowly. From his side, "You're hurt worse than me," she said softly. Kale shook his head. "I endure." But his breathing betrayed him. It was heavy, uneven. Ilara's heart clenched. Without waiting, she pulled her medical bag closer. "You won't endure long if you bleed like that. Let me help." Kale's glowing eyes narrowed. His kind did not trust humans, not even their medicine, but he did not stop her when she moved closer. She cut away part of his armor, revealing dark skin scarred by many battles. The wound was deep, burned black at the edges. Ilara pressed her supplies against it, cleaning, sealing, binding. Kyle flinched but did not cry out. His eyes stayed locked on her face, watching her expression as she worked. She was gentle yet fierce. A healer, not a killer. For a long time, silence filled the chamber, broken only by the sound of her hands working. Then Alara spoke, her voice soft. I never thought I'd be this close to one of you. My people, they told us your kind had no mercy, that you lived only to fight. Kale's voice was low, almost a growl. That is what they teach us in two. Humans are weak, soft, not worthy. And do you believe that? Kyle looked at her for a long moment. I believed, until I saw you. Her hands froze for a second. She looked up, meeting his eyes. His tone carried no mockery, no trick. Only truth. Alara swallowed hard, then forced herself to continue bandaging. You've killed many of my kind, haven't you? Kyle's gaze fell to the floor. He did not deny it. Silence was answer enough. A shadow crossed her heart. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to push him away. But the memory of him shielding her, bleeding for her, would not leave her mind. You're not like the others, she whispered at last. Kyle raised his head. And you, not like them. The chamber grew quiet again. Their eyes held each other's longer than before. Something unspoken grew between them, fragile but strong. Alara finished wrapping his side and sat back, exhausted. There. That should hold. Kyle touched the bandage with his clawed hand. Your hands save life. Even mine. Alara gave a tired smile. That's what I do. Kyle studied her face. She looked so fragile, yet her spirit burned brighter than most warriors he knew. Slowly he spoke. Tell me, why you fight? Alara hesitated. Then she whispered, because I don't want my people to die. I don't want children to grow up in war. I don't want more graves. Her eyes grew wet, but she blinked back the tears. That's why I became a medic. I can't stop the war, but I can save someone even for a little while. Kale's chest tightened. He had been taught that war was honor, that victory was survival. But her words struck him deeper than any blade. And you? She asked, her voice quiet but firm. Why do you fight? Kale's eyes dimmed. Because I was born to. No choice. My life was battle. Kill or die. I never asked why. Until now. Alara leaned back against the wall, her heart heavy. She realized he was not just a soldier. He was a prisoner of his own people's war. For the first time, she whispered his name softly. Kale. The sound of it from her lips made something stir inside him. No commander had ever spoken his name with such gentleness. He lifted his gaze, meeting hers in silence. In that broken chamber, two enemies shared more than bandages. They shared truth. They shared the weight of war. They shared a fragile moment of connection, but the moment could not last. A distant rumble shook the tunnel. The pursuit had not ended. They were still being hunted. Kyle stood quickly, ignoring his pain. They come. Alara struggled to her feet, leaning on the wall. Her voice shook. Then we'll never make it. Kyle's eyes glowed with determination. He reached out, his hand strong and steady. We try. Together. Alara stared at his hand. For a long second she hesitated. Then she placed her smaller hand in his. For the first time they were no longer just alien and human, enemy and medic. They were something else. Two souls bound by secrets, walking into a storm they could not escape. The tunnels grew narrower, darker, until even the broken lights were gone. Kale and Alara walked in silence, their footsteps echoing softly. Every breath carried the weight of fear and exhaustion. Kale's body ached, his wound burning beneath the bandage Alara had made. Yet he did not slow. His duty now was clear. Protect her, no matter the cost. Alara leaned on him as they moved. Her leg was weak, but her will kept her upright. Still, in her heart, doubt grew. How long could they run? How long before Kale's people or her own found them? That answer came sooner than she expected. A bright red glow filled the tunnel ahead. Heavy steps echoed. From the shadows, a group of alien warriors emerged, their armor shining, their weapons ready. At the front stood a towering figure, Kyle's commander. His armor was sharper, darker, his eyes glowing like fire. "Kyle," the commander's voice thundered, echoing through the chamber. "You have broken our law. You betrayed your blood. And for what?" "A human." Kyle tightened his grip on his weapon. His chest rose and fell, but he stood tall. Ilara's heart pounded as she looked from Kale to the commander. The air trembled, with danger. "Kill her," the commander growled. "Prove your loyalty. Strike her down, and you may return. Refuse, and you die as a traitor." The words hung heavy in the darkness. Ilara froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly toward Kale. His weapon was in his hand. His eyes glowed. His silence was terrifying. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Would he turn on her now? Was everything they had shared, his protection, his sacrifice, their secrets, only a passing weakness? Kale lifted his weapon. Ilara's heart cracked. She whispered almost too softly to hear, "If this is the end, make it quick." But Kale did not move toward her. Instead, he stepped forward, placing himself between Ilara and the commander. His voice was deep, unshaken. "No, she lives." The commander's eyes flared with fury. "You dare defy me? For a human? You shame our bloodline." Kyle raised his blade, its edge glowing. His voice rumbled through the tunnel like thunder. "She is not enemy. She is life. More life than war ever gave me." Ilara's eyes widened. Her chest burned with something fierce, something she could not name. The commander roared, lifting his weapon. "Then you are no longer one of us. You are nothing." The soldiers behind him moved forward, the tunnel filled with the hum of weapons, charging. Kale looked back once at Ilara. For the first time, his hard face softened. "Stay behind me." And then the storm began. The commander struck first, his blade a flash of crimson. Kale met it with his own, the clash sending sparks through the tunnel. The sound of steel on steel echoed like thunder, shaking dust from the ceiling. Ilara pressed herself against the wall, fear gripping her. Kyle was strong, but the commander was relentless. Blow after blow fell, faster, harder, like fire raining down. Kyle fought with all his strength, his movements heavy but precise. He blocked, struck, twisted, but his wound slowed him. Blood dripped down his side, his breathing harsher with each strike. The commander's voice roared through the tunnel. "You throw away honor. You throw away your people." Kale's reply came with a powerful strike that forced the commander back. His voice was raw, filled with something deeper than rage. "I choose my own path. I choose her." Ilara's breath caught. In those words she heard not just defiance, but devotion. The commander's fury exploded. He charged with savage force. Kale met him, blades flashing, sparks flying. Each strike shook the walls, each roar carried the weight of war. But Kale was weakening. His knees bent, his movement slowed. The commander raised his weapon for a killing. "Blow, no!" Ilara screamed. Without thinking, she grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground and hurled it at the commander. It struck his helmet, distracting him for a heartbeat. That heartbeat was enough. Kale's blade surged forward, cutting across the commander's chest. Sparks and blood burst as the commander staggered, roaring in pain. The other soldiers stepped forward, but Kale spun, his weapon glowing with fury. His voice thundered, "Stand back." Something in his power, in his defiance, made them hesitate. None dared move closer. The commander fell to his knees, clutching his wound. His voice was a ragged growl. "You are finished, Kyle. You and your human will die. If not by my hand, then by the war itself." With a final roar, he collapsed, the glow in his eyes fading to darkness. Silence filled the tunnel. The soldiers looked at their fallen leader, then at Kale. For a long moment, no one moved. Finally, one by one, they stepped back into the shadows, leaving their commander behind. Kale lowered his blade, his chest heaving, blood dripping to the floor. His legs trembled, but he stayed standing. Ilara rushed to him, her hands shaking as she touched his arm. You could have chosen your people, you could have lived. Why choose me? Kyle looked down at her, his glowing eyes softer than she had ever seen. His voice was weak, but steady. Because you showed me life is more than war, because you are my reason. Her heart ached, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to speak, but no words came. She simply held him, holding the warrior who had chosen her over everything he had ever known. The war was not over. Their enemies were many. But in that tunnel, one truth burned brighter than the fires above. Kale had made his final choice, and nothing would ever be the same again. The tunnel was silent after the battle. Only Kale's rough breathing and the drip of his blood echoed in the dark. The glow of his blade dimmed as he lowered it, his strength nearly gone. Ilara stayed close, her hands pressed against his side, trying to stop the bleeding. Her heart raced, not from fear but from the thought that she might lose him. You can't keep fighting like this, she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale's glowing eyes met hers. His chest rose and fell slowly, each breath heavy. I fight because you live. Her throat tightened. She had heard warriors speak of honor, victory, and glory. But Kyle's words were none of those. His words were simple, pure. Above them, the rumble of engines grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling. The war was not finished, the battlefield still raged outside. Both humans and aliens would soon flood these tunnels. If they stayed, they would be trapped. Ilara gripped his arm. We have to go, we can't stay here. Kale nodded weakly. His body swayed, but his will kept him moving. He sheathed his weapon and leaned on the wall for support. Slowly, together, they began to walk deeper into the tunnel. The path twisted and turned until they found a cracked stairway leading up. Faint moonlight shone through, offering a way back to the surface. When they emerged, the city lay before them. Fires burned in the distance, casting red light over broken towers. The sky was filled with smoke and streaks of warships. It was a world of ruin. But under the pale stars there was also silence, just for a moment. Kale stood at the edge of the rubble, his armor torn, his body broken. Ilara stood beside him, her hand clutching his arm for balance. Two enemies, bound, now by something stronger than war. Ilara spoke softly, her voice heavy with emotion. What happens now, Kale? You can't go back to your people. And if my soldiers see you, they'll kill you. Kale turned his eyes to her. The glow was dim, but steady. I go where you go. Her heart stopped for a second. Why? You'd give up everything. Your home, your kind, your honor? Kale looked out over the burning city. His voice was low but certain. Honor is not war. Honor is life. You gave me life. Ilara's chest ached. She wanted to argue, to tell him it was impossible, but the words would not come, because in her heart she wanted the same. Suddenly a beam of light swept across the ruins, a human scout drone. Ilara pulled Kale into the shadows quickly. The drone hovered, scanning. Before moving on, her voice was urgent. If they find us together, it's over. We have to leave this place. Kale nodded. His hand, strong but trembling, reached for hers. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. His grip was warm, steady. They moved through the ruins, hiding from patrols, dodging drones, each step a battle of its own. Kyle's wound slowed him, but he never let go of her hand. Ilara's leg ached, but she never asked him to stop. At last, they reached the edge of the city. Beyond the ruins lay open land, dark hills stretching under the night sky. It was unknown, territory, but it was freedom. Kyle paused, looking back at the burning city. For the first time in his life, he felt no pride in the battlefield, only sorrow. Ilara noticed his silence. Do you regret it? Leaving your people? Turning against them? Kale turned to her, his voice quiet but firm. No regret, only truth. My war ended when I chose you. Her breath caught. In that moment she realized what he had done. He had broken his world, his future, everything he had ever known. Her tears filled her eyes. Kale, why me? I'm just a medic. I'm not a soldier. I'm not powerful. Kale reached out, brushing his clawed hand gently against her arm. His touch was careful, almost fragile. Because you see life, not death. You see me, not monster. Ilara's tears spilled. She leaned closer, her forehead resting lightly against his chest. For the first time since the war began, she felt safe. Truly safe. Kale's arms wrapped around her carefully, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the universe. His voice was a whisper, raw and deep. You are my reason to live. The world around them was still fire and ruin. The war was far from over. But in that quiet embrace, it no longer mattered. For one alien warrior and one human medic, the battlefield had become something else entirely. It had become a place where hearts could meet. And in that meeting, even in the darkest of wars, there was hope.